Good evening, everybody. I'm the person that's keeping you away from dinner and a long day, but I promise you it will be valuable. So it's been, no, I'm loud, I think. I can put it on. It's been really, really fascinating to hear much of what's been discussed today. And what it seems to boil down to is a couple of things, right? And one is really the big issue, which is engagement. And how do you do that? The second thing seems to be, security. Somebody said here, the dark side. How do you handle that? The third thing seems to be all about people work in a certain way. How do we kind of bring that all together? So I'll try to address some of those topics because I think those are at the core of what, irrespective of everything else, that's the core, as many of you here as, communications and internal communications professionals, that's really defining success to a large extent. But the interesting thing is we're at a tipping point here. There is a tool for everything. Right? Like I say, software has progressed so far that you want to tote up your accounts as a tool. You want to stack up the chairs as your tool. So much so for collaboration. There's a tool for everything. You want to do blogs, there's like pick and choose. So what's happening, that's on our side as collaboration professionals. But what about the users, right? For them, the amount of information that's at their beck and call is overwhelming. A typical employee, like many of us, just think about what we do. We make about 8 to 9 telephone calls a day, access, input, or extract, or log in to 5 to 6 different systems. It might be a transactional system to input a purchase order, or it might be your collaboration system to put something in. And as everybody said through the whole day, we still have to deal with emails. So the reality is that if you want to address, that is, in some sense, our social communication. That's our 20th century social communication, happening every day. Now, if you create a social network, or what goes for a social network, that's a fifth piece, while all the rest remain, it's not going to work. So the real important thing to understand is, really, how do you make it useful for people, is to take those standard things people do, input, output systems, make those calls or communicate, whichever way it is, or those emails, and really refashion the way people work so that it's useful and not another thing that I've got to log into. And so, when you really think about this, right, you have tools, more tools than you can shake a stick at. All of us are trying, when we go into work, to answer these 3 existential questions. Who knows who? Who do I need to call? Who knows what? And what is where? That's all. That's what it's all about. Who do I call to get some help? Right? Well, who can I call contextually who could help me? Because I know they know something about this particular area. And has the package been shipped? Has that deal been closed? Have I been paid? If you're going to go into your benefits portal. It's that simple. Those are the 3 questions that need to be answered. And the problem we have is this. To answer those 3 simple questions, there's a lot of noise. It's all noise, right? And we are all trying to figure out, to answer those 3 questions, all through that noise. You could call it social media noise, email noise, telephone, voicemail, whatever. It's all noise. And that's the fundamental issue. The right information to the right person at the right time in the right context. And the reason I mention this is because that's Tibco's mission. And that's from where we've come here. And I'll give you a little background on Tibco. Many of you may not know Tibco, but Tibco's been around for about 10 years and over $1 billion in revenues, 4,000 customers. But, you know, in the early days when there was no IP network, our mission was to get information in real time. With that, we really digitized Wall Street. You know, all the trading flows, 18 of the 20 top, exchanges all use Tibco. Then we moved to systems. And, you know, we got big enterprises spend billions of dollars on systems, but they wouldn't talk to each other. So we focused on that. And if you look at if you pick up a phone in probably any major market in Europe, and as soon as you walk out of that store, your phone is live. That's because of Tibco. When you trade on any exchange, whether it's over here in Germany or in London, the fact that your trade goes through is because of Tibco, because we got systems to talk to each other. So that's where we're coming from in terms of thinking about information. And the fact that social computing now presented an opportunity to get all that information to the right person at the right time. The right time can be real time, or it can be Monday morning, or it can be a digest version at the end of the day. But the most important thing is the right context. And let me explain to you what that is. So in my mind, there are 5 ways to make enterprise social a success. I don't want to call it collaboration, because collaboration is a given. The first and most important thing, easy to get started. It's got to be easy. And I tell people, if you need to have a training program, forget about it. It's like my grandmother who uses Facebook. She did not get a training program. She just went and used it. The third login, she started sharing pictures. And it's useful. So if you're going to go the 20th century route, where you put a tool in, you create a big deployment schedule, and then you have all these meetings, you're going to get a 5% hit rate. Because there inevitably is going to be a whole bunch of people who want to do it the old way, who don't want to come for your meeting. You'll have to send reminders, then they won't show up, and it all goes on. So it has to be easy. When it's easy, people will log in. Make sure it's their common ID that they log in. Make sure it's deceptively simple to use. So get it easy on the user side. The second part about getting easy is make it easy on you. Make it easy on the people that support you, IT. If it's a 6-month, 9-month project to just get it live, then you have that big elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is that ROI justification number you have to give, and all the meetings you have to attend to get the project approved. So make it easy on the users, make it easy on you, and most important, make it easy on the IT folks who are going to help you to get this live. So if you can get it live in an afternoon and get it up and running, you're golden. You're already ahead of everybody else. Second and most important thing, and we've talked about this a little bit, if you want to make it useful, first we talked about making it easy. Second, we talked about making it useful. Get people access or use an approach that gives them access to all sources of information. And I go back to my original point. So it's not just people. Because at work, it's great in Facebook and you meet, it's all about at work, we actually do transactions. We approve things, we read things. So whether it's your transaction system or your financial system, or it could be even a cloud-based system that the company has chosen for CRM. Make sure those systems or your users can get access through those systems that post on the proverbial wall, if you me to use a metaphor, or your home page, if that's the word to use, so that they should not find a reason to leave your social network. Again, it goes back to the original point. They're going to do telephone calls, they're going to access all these systems, they're going to do emails. If this is one more thing they have to do, then you have a more difficult problem. So instead of making it one more thing you have to do, bring them all in for all their normal activities. So think about it the way they do their work. And have context. And context is a very interesting thing, and I'll talk about it a little bit later about how we do it with subjects, and I'll probably show it to you if you guys are interested. But when people talk about in that community, that you would still be interested in, but you hesitate because you're going to get all this fees. So we pioneered the idea of subjects. And the idea behind subjects in an enterprise is a recognition that everybody wants information, but sometimes they want very thin slices of information in context that's relevant to you at this point in time. It might be relevant to you last month, but you don't want to get it anymore. And you can make them as big or as narrow as you want. So you could say, I'm a salesperson in the northeast part of the United States, so all customers in the northeast, doesn't matter whether they're defense, whatever, I want to know what's happening with all of them. Or this is an example in our finance department, which is accounting clerks. There are 500 to 600 people in finance. And they're all part of, if they were in a normal situation, they would be all part of the finance group or the accounting group. But there's only 20 people who deal with accounting close. Well, can they get the sliver of information that's relevant to them? Or you could get even more granular and say Samsung shipment status. So the idea of context is very important to make people productive, to give them only the sliver of information that they need. Fourth, must adhere to how people actually work. And this is a very interesting thing that we have found. So, the first thing is this whole concept of video conferencing and unified communications tools. The interesting thing is there are hundreds and hundreds of tools like that out there, but think about how you use it now. You send a meeting request, right? There's 7 people that you want to have a meeting in 2 days. And 4 respond. And then those 4, 1 or 2 will drop off because they couldn't make the meeting. What happens after that? You still send out a minutes because of the 4 that didn't show up. So you're trying to use a 21st century tool. You're trying to do it the way, but the process, the approach is still a very 20th century. What if you could do that off your wall? What if you could see, hey, you saw a post that you didn't like, you're a manager, and you saw a post on the latest sales figures. See if all the guys who work for you, if you have presence, as many of you here would know what presence is, you see green, that means they're all online. Fire up a video conference on your wall. Have that conference within the context of that particular post. The 3 people that are not there, it's recorded automatically and posted to their wall. You're doing it within context, the way you would work. The way you would work normally would be, pick up the phone and call somebody, right? Instantaneous. So that's what you want to do with your collaboration tool. You want to be able to give people that ad hoc action because then they'll use it. Last but not the least, today we talked about BYOD, bring your own device. But I think a lot of companies still don't want to, kind of do that. So you need to have support across every device. I'll give you an example of a customer I was talking to, $3.5 billion company. The person on the dock who's basically a freight forwarder is using an HTC $20 phone. Management is using a brand new iPhone. The person in the warehouse is using a generic Android phone. And the shipping supervisors were all being given tablets. Now you need to democratize information. All those people should have access. And that's like a given. If you're not going to give all those people access right from the front, right from the beginning, then you've effectively, out of the gate, reduced the number of people who are going to be engaged in your network. So it's like, this is my honest opinion, and I've done about 60 of these at some of the largest companies in the world. If you cannot give access to everybody who's at a network right out of the gate, you are going to lose 30% up front. Because then, I'll log in on my terminal. Because you got to do it the way people actually work. Like somebody was saying, yeah, check your emails. Well, I need to check my social network and be able to post whatever time of the day. Because now you don't have work days, you have working moments. So these two are simple examples of trying to adhere to the way we work. So when we talk about engagement, we talk about culture, and we talk about why people are not engaged, it's because we need to pay attention to the way people work and fit into that, as opposed to the other way around. Last but not the least, make IT happy. You have to do that. And it could be in a variety of ways. It could be a system where IT has decided that they're going to do everything on the cloud. Or it could be on-premise. So you need to get it, it should be easy and up and running, but it should be on-premise because that's what the rules are. Or it could be on the cloud, in a cloud that's defined by IT, but it needs to be up and running quickly. And the governance and security, right? Security is, it's not just security in terms of the technical details. The interesting thing about security is, from a user standpoint, as many of you know, it's really about who has access to your conversation. How do they have access to your conversation? And that's what's more important. I was talking to a person who was telling me, it doesn't matter cloud, doesn't matter whatever, right? All the security issues. It's really about, I'm not going to have the top executives of my company, their private conversations in an open network. But you have to go deep in and ask, what is an open network? How do you create Chinese walls? And we use a method, we call them private subjects. And what the idea behind private subjects is, how do you create the concept of a confidential meeting on your wall? How do you wall things out? How do you make sure when people search for this, it's not even visible? And that will help IT to understand and be supportive of how you're deploying it. Because the other thing is about governance, right? I was talking to somebody here today, very large consulting firm, very, very large consulting firm, deployed Yammer, for example. You guys probably heard about Yammer. And people love it, it's on the cloud, it's up and running. But then, somebody here was talking about, what are the rules? And then the communications people and the IT people got together and created the rule book. Okay? And as they should. By the time the rule book was done, there were only 3 categories of things you could post. What was the point? It was a 65,000 person network or something of that sort. But by the time the rule book was done, then all you're going to get is cafeteria menus and vacation pictures. No real work gets done. So it's really important to make IT happy across all these dimensions. So I'll tell you an interesting story about a customer of ours, because I think it's reflective of this whole ROI question. Now, what really is ROI, right? We talk about KPIs, business KPIs, and I think Maria was talking about business KPIs. It's really business KPIs that are important. And this story is about a banana. So KPMG is a very large consulting firm, and they get all kinds of consulting requests. And one was from a very large banana manufacturer. How do you peel a banana? Actually, it's very expensive to peel bananas by the ton. And so KPMG was actually kind of given a project to figure out the most efficient way to peel a banana. And so people started, posting about all this stuff, like, well, one person who was a specialist in fruit processing said, well, you could, design a machine, right? Another person who was a specialist in actually vegetable processing said, well, you could put bananas in a warm room and inject steam into that. And that was the right answer. It's very easy to do that. Somebody else I saw posted underneath said we can hire a lot of monkeys to do that. But the point is, the person who actually did that post was an intern who just happened to be actually subscribing to a subject related to fruit processing. That was an interest of hers. So it was somebody who was very interested in a very thin slice of information, who actually was not a big, consultant in that area. Just happened to come up with an idea. And that saved KPMG a lot of money, and more importantly, got them a lot of projects in the food processing business. So it's an interesting story and tell you that, don't get hung up on ROI. And I think, as the gentleman from BT said, if it's easy to implement, then this ROI problem goes away. If it's a couple of bucks a user, take that off your plate. If it's not a 6-month project or a 1-year project, the ROI questions get a lot easier. Just get it up and running. Automatically, your users will be delivering ROI and be using it for things you didn't dream about. Here's another real ROI example that I'll give you. And here I'll use the example of, that I put earlier. OOCL, you may or may not have heard of them. Orient Shipping Containers, Orient Container Lines. They are a $3.2 billion company, second largest shipping company in the world. And their main job is to ship parts, electronics from China to the US. And one of their biggest customers is Samsung, right? And it's a simple issue. And this is an example of how, ROI sometimes, they didn't even think about this when they created the network. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, Samsung TVs have to show up on time. And the way they look at this is disruptions. The disruption could be bad weather. It could be a bunch of defective TVs. And this is a long supply chain right from Shanghai all the way to Best Buy in Minneapolis in the northern United States. Now think about common ways in which everything related to Samsung shipment status is usually communicated in a distributed global enterprise. A few people who plug into a logistics system, checking where, the container is. There's a shipping system. There's a bunch of people who know each other, so they follow each other. But in the subject model, what happens is everybody in the distributed supply chain doesn't need to know each other. They just follow that particular subject. So what happens is the shipping clerk in Shanghai who's shipping it follows Samsung shipment status. The shipping and clearing clerk in Long Beach follows that particular subject. Joe in accounting in New Jersey, who's actually going to process the invoice, follows that subject. And then there's a person in distribution in Minneapolis whose job depends on getting into the Best Buy stores before Christmas, follows that subject. So the subject model democratizes information, number one. Number two, gives you a sliver that is really important to your job. And number three, deliver it in a universal access model. People will use it. That's my kind of thing to you. Make it relevant, make it contextual, deliver it in universal access. So another story I'll tell you about is actually in the news today in Esquire magazine. We just created what they call the Facebook for the 200 most important people in the world, which is the people attending the World Economic Forum in Davos from tomorrow. And the ability to create a ridiculously secure, as Professor Schwab, who many of you may know, said, Facebook plus Twitter plus Skype, all for the CEOs of the 200 largest companies and the Japanese Prime Minister, is for us a very easy way to explain how secure you can make it. And this was a month and a half project to make it this easy and secure. So getting it up and running, putting it, and having folks like this use it. I mean, these are not the folks who normally will log into a network. But if you can make it easy for them, it's simply an example of how easy you can make it for the average employee. Also wanted to talk, we talked a lot about companies, but if you make it easy, governments, non-profits can use it to get real things done. IFE is the Mexican Election Commission. And one of the big issues they have is, and the election is coming up in September, one of the big issues they have is between monitors, election commissioners, and election officers in 12 states. Now that certainly is not your average demographic for collaboration. Okay? These are election officers in remote states across Mexico. But they chose to use this approach because it was easy, it was up and running, and it was on every smartphone they could use. Another great example is Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders, who you all probably familiar with, is using this to reorder supplies. Contact doctors in Chad, doctors in Libya now, contacting Pfizer in the United States in real time. Because as long as you have a phone, you can talk. The old way, they had a satellite phone. They called the Doctors Without Borders Central Supply Chain Center in Madrid, and then they sent a fax to Pfizer to ship medicines. Typical turnaround, 3 months. Right? So you're seeing the ability to collaborate in the most unlikeliest of scenarios. And it's really becoming a very, very useful way to move information around. And I'll close with this because I think this really, in some sense, and this is about Tibco, we are obviously a very big user of Tibber. But what I'd like to do is just give you a sense of what engagement means in this model. When you get the right information to the right person in the right context within your enterprise, and they actually can get work done, this is what engagement looks like. The average Facebook person follows a lot of people. A lot of people. At work, you follow much less people because those are the only people who matter, those are the only people you work with, or they're relevant to you. The average Facebook user puts 70 pieces of content a month. The average user here puts about 210 pieces of content. And I can show you an example. We have just eliminated our CRM system because all the information, is in a stream now. You can if you're getting engagement and sharing the collective intelligence of what's going on, the amount of, so this is a significant KPI that you should look at for success. How much user-generated content is coming on? And then I talk to you about subjects. how we look at it. Very, very fine-grained subjects, you know, Samsung shipment status. Very, very relevant to you. And then the big one. The big one all the time. Watch it. The average Facebook person, which is all of us, right? We check in a couple of times. 55 minutes on the site a day. The average person who works spends over 147 minutes. That means if you're going to do that, you're not going in and just checking. You're actually in there doing things and not going to another system to do things. So that's how I, you know, from what I heard, you know, my suggestions on how you should think about this. Make it easy, you know. Make sure what you're doing is in context. Get IT on your side. Make them happy. And I think, you know, you can get engagement will be, you know, much easier to handle. So with that, you know, I can share some other interesting things, or I think if you're, you know, done for time.
I think we're pretty much at the time now.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer them. And by the way, for all of you there, go try it out. Just go to Tibber, www.tibber.com, and you can log in and invite the friends from your company and try it out. It's simple. It's free. It's no issue. Try it out.
It's not free.
It's not free, man. Anyway, any questions I can help to answer? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.